back to our Thanksgiving series. I do not need to be rocking because this chair will squeak really loudly. I know we've been talking a lot about setting intentions for gratitude during the month of November as we're getting prepared to go into the birth of Christ, celebrating the birth of Christ in December. And then we had our psalm verses last week to really set that intention. I hope you're doing your journaling and setting intentions every day and thinking of something every day to be grateful for this month. Now, I really wanted to do my own research, first of all, and be able to share with you what started this Thanksgiving tradition anyway. So, let's talk about the first Thanksgiving. A group of about 100 men and women set sail for the New World in 1620. They were seeking religious freedom from the Church of England. They had moved from England to Holland in search of this freedom, and then because they weren't really getting the freedom they needed there, decided to establish some churches in the New World. That's what it was referred to as. Some of the notable leaders on the voyage were Miles Standish, who was a professional soldier, and William Bradford, who was the leader of a separatist congregation. The voyage was really tough, and it took they landed in Plymouth on November 11th, 1620. So it took it actually were 66 days at sea. 78% of the women died within the first year. So that's a lot of, there weren't a lot of women left actually at this time. There was a lot of disease and problems like that happened. They also encountered the Wampanoag. I'm not sure how to say that. Let me spell it for you. Wampanoag. Indians. And they had been in North America long before the Europeans arrived. Now, there is a book that I looked at called The Chronicles of the Pilgrim Fathers of the Colony of Plymouth that gives lots of accounts of the different religious activities and references to God and establishing churches in the New World, if you're interested in doing more research on that. It was written by someone of the time and is actually in a historical archive. So I did take a little look at that, and it's really kind of interesting. Now, they arrived in the New World, and in December of 1621 is when they actually had the first Thanksgiving. So they landed November 11th, 1620. So they had been in the New World almost a year. So throughout that time, they worked with these Indians to help with raising crops and settling and probably building homes and shelters and so forth. So by the time we get to December 1621, which was when they had the first when the first Thanksgiving likely occurred, there was 50 or so colonists, including 22 men, 4 married women, and 25 teens and children. That's who was left. They were outnumbered by their Indian guests 2-1, roughly. The first feast actually lasted about 3 days, and it was a celebration of the harvest and consisted of feasting, games, and military exercises. So I wanted to do a little more research on the Indians that were here when the settlers came, and they were friends of the settlers. In fact, they taught him how to grow many crops when they first arrived: corn, squash, beans, and they also taught them about fishing methods at the time. And Squanto lived among the settlers. He was one of the Indians, and the tribe at this time was hit by an epidemic likely brought to them by the settlers of smallpox. They had about 90% loss of life at this time from interaction with the European settlers. So what did they really eat at the first Thanksgiving? It wasn't turkey and dressing, people. I found it to be really interesting. So the menu of the first celebration is very different than what we have today. Likely consisted of venison and shellfish, along with vegetables harvested from their gardens. So the vegetables that they likely had were cabbage, carrots, cucumbers, leeks, parsnips, and pumpkin. Now, they also would have feasted on native plants like Jerusalem, artichokes, garlic, cranberries, Concord grapes, walnuts, and chestnuts. So it certainly did not include pumpkin pie because there was no butter or flour at this time with the settlers. And doubtful that they had any way to cook a pie or anything like that. So the tradition of celebrating the harvest really caught on and became an annual event. Now, how did Thanksgiving become a holiday? I was curious about that. So this is how it kind of got its start. And then it didn't become a holiday right away. Actually did not become a holiday until 1863. So there was a young lady named Sarah Josephia Hale, who had fought for several years, like over 10 years. She was trying to get people to recognize Thanksgiving as an annual holiday. And finally, in 1863, now what else was going on in 1863, people? Oh, wait, a Civil War. So in the midst of a Civil War, she convinced Abraham Lincoln to designate the last Thursday in November as Thanksgiving Day. So wow, it's come a long way from those original settlers who started with just a celebration, thankful to be alive. Let's just say that they survived and got their colony started, to now all the different traditions we celebrate across the country, which I find to be fascinating. So I just wanted to let you know that all my research came from the History Channel, and then I went into some of the archives that they suggested. So I tried to get some reliable facts there. So if you like this, I hope you'll subscribe. And I did want to remind you about your gratitude journal once again, and just say that even though there's not like a Bible verse that goes with this week, it really is about people seeking the freedom to worship God in their own way that brought our country into existence. And I don't want us to forget that this Thanksgiving season. It's a time to be thankful for the sacrifices made by our ancestors. And wow, the battles that they overcome, and the tenacity that they had to be, they were hardened, and they had to, disease ridden, and all these different things that affected them to get our country started. I just want us to remember that and reflect on that during this season. So let's, with a thankful heart, move into the next few weeks of Thanksgiving. Be sure and like this channel and subscribe, and I will see you next time.